Tonight, an Indiana mother's heartbreaking story of loss and her efforts to push for change on a national level. Purdue University student Shea McCarthy died in 2013. His mother believes a powerful antibiotic is to blame for Shea's death. Call 6 Investigates Kara Kinney has been tracking concerns surrounding the drugs for nearly a year now, and the message this mom wants you to hear.
I can't believe I dressed him that way.
McCarthy describes her son Shea as unique and outgoing.
His dream was to go on campus to Purdue.
After his freshman year at Purdue, Shea decided to have surgery for a deviated septum. His doctor prescribed 30 days of a powerful antibiotic known on the market as Levaquin, part of a family of drugs named fluoroquinolones, intended to knock out serious infections like pneumonia.
He didn't even have an infection. This was just to prevent an infection from happening. It's like taking a cannon to kill a mosquito.
Heather says her son started acting strangely and told doctors, friends, and family he thought the drug was messing with his mind, so he quit taking it. But Heather says the effects still lingered.
He went back to campus, and the first thing that started happening was he started having these kind of like anxiety attacks and like heart palpitations.
He had never had anxiety up until this point.
No.
Shay's anxiety got so bad he dropped out of school and ended up in the mental health system, where doctors prescribed him more drugs for bipolar disorder.
It was a faint shadow of who he was.
On October 23, 2013, Shea jumped out a second-story window, got in his car, and crashed into a cement embankment. He died at the age of just 24. His mom believes it was a moment of sheer agitation and anxiety.
I believe it overcame him, and he that was... I'm sorry.
Call 6 Investigates obtained the FDA database of adverse reactions to Levaquin and found more than 31,000 complaints since 2010, including 179 reported deaths, hundreds of patients complaining of depression and anxiety. Fluoroquinolones already have a black box warning for tendon rupture, but there's a push for even more label warnings. Heather testified in November before an FDA advisory panel convened to talk about fluoroquinolones.
This was a drug-induced death that was unnecessary.
Consumer advocacy group Public Citizen also testified.
And so the FDA will consider making labeling changes, and we hope they will do that sooner than later to protect public health.
Former Indiana State Health Commissioner and family physician Richard Feldman calls fluoroquinolones a big gun.
These medications are prescribed every day in Indiana.
Oh, absolutely, every day.
Does that concern you at all?
The only concern I have is it being used appropriately.
Dr. Feldman prescribes fluoroquinolones for significant infections and often when another antibiotic doesn't work. He says the public needs to keep in mind all medications have side effects, and these FDA figures?
Those numbers can be deceiving. Just because it's reported doesn't mean it's actually related.
Heather McCarthy says there's a deadly downside to fluoroquinolones. She's filed a lawsuit against the doctors alleging they ignored her son's belief that Levaquin caused his mental health problems.
The hardest thing about this is my son knew what was wrong with him, and no one listened to him.
Heather McCarthy's mission now to be her son's voice, telling everyone who will listen about the drug's side effects.
What I would tell him, if I could, is you were right. You were right.
Kara Kinney, RTV 6.
A 2014 citizen petition to the FDA raised concerns about psychiatric effects of Levaquin, including anxiety that can happen even weeks or even months after the last dose.
Citizens called for the FDA to add a black box warning about those psychiatric effects, but the FDA has not taken that action. The FDA declined an on-camera interview, but says it is considering information presented at the November meeting and is determining future actions. The makers of Levaquin also released a statement saying the existing labeling is appropriate. We continue to discuss and collaborate with FDA in relation to the committee's recommendations and to any additional steps to continue to support the safe and appropriate use of fluoroquinolone antibiotics.